Hello, my name is Lay. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a reading wrap-up. For me, it's going to be a 5-month reading wrap-up. So between January and May, I wanted to wrap up all the books that I read. I have read a total of 17 books, about to be 18. So it's about to be 18 books in the last 5 months. I started back in January. Now, I want to do this monthly, so it's not going to always be this many books, but I did want to quickly talk about some of the books that I have gotten through because I've done a lot of book hauls and not enough talking about the books that I've actually read. So I want to quickly get into that. So let's start with January. January is when I made my first goal to start reading again. I suffer with a lot of depression, not just postpartum, but from life as a whole, period. I am a stay-at-home mom for now. I will be, I do plan on starting to work soon. Sometimes life can get really hard, and sometimes it feels really lonely. And social media and regular media can really put a damper on how you feel about yourself, at least for me, or it has for me. Not saying that I don't love myself, but I am trying to say that what I see in the media affects me. So one of my goals was to pick up reading again. I used to read a lot in middle school and high school and in college, actually. It wasn't until I got pregnant with my eldest child, who is now 11. It wasn't until I got pregnant with her that I kind of put reading down. I kind of put it to the side because I was more focused on being a mom, and now motherhood and being a wife has kind of consumed my identity. So trying to grab a little bit of me again, I decided to pick up reading again. I made a goal to read between 12 and 24 books for the entire year. So 1 to 2 books a month. So we're going into January and I did 1 book. I started with The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, or Haig. I'm not really sure how you pronounce it. This was a great book to start my reading journey, and this definitely got me back into reading 100%. This book is about mental health. The main character in this book, let's see, what was her name? So the main character, her name is Nora, and everything in her life just seems to be going wrong. The best part about this book is she gets, search up trigger warnings for sure, because it does talk about
deleting yourself.
In this book, she is not happy with some of the life decisions that she's made. So she ends up falling into this magical realm, which is the Midnight Library. And in that library, you can pick any book, and those books are basically decisions that you made throughout your life. So, for example, if there was a boy that you liked in high school, but you never talked to him, you can pick up a book, and in that book, it'll show you what your life would have been like if you did talk to him. And you can either choose to stay there, or you can come back to the library and choose a different life, choose a different decision. So it has a really good message at the end of the book, and it was really good to read, especially when I was focusing on my mental health. So this was a really good book to read. It was an easy book to read, but I did take my time. This book is about 288 pages, so under 300 pages. If I were to read this now, I would finish it in 2 days, but it did take me a month to finish this, so this is what got me started. Now, February. So February is my birthday month, and it's not just my birthday month. I have me, of course. My middle child, Dylan, her birthday is February 10th. My mother-in-law, her birthday is February 17th. I am February 19th. And then there's Valentine's Day, which is the 14th. There's a lot going on in February. So I didn't really have a lot of time to read. So again, I only read one book. And I got this off of Book Talk. This is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Most of the Colleen Hoover stans will tell you that this is probably one of the best books that she has. Personally, on Goodreads, I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, but if I'm sitting back and looking at it now, I would definitely give this more of like a 3.5 star. Not saying that it's not good. Again, you do need to search up trigger warnings before reading a book like this, but I didn't like the ending. I felt like this was actually marketed as a romance novel, but this is definitely not romance. There was nothing in here that was romantic. There was a lot of trauma in this book. And I think if it was marketed as a trauma book, it might have been a little easier to digest. But for me, because it wasn't as romance driven, it actually had like a lot of sad parts, a lot of parts that were like heartbreaking. So it follows Lily and Ryle at first. And you go through their entire journey, but then you also have flashbacks. So this is like a past and present type book. You go throughout their journey in their relationship now, but then you go into Lily's past and you meet Atlas, who is her first love. So you are kind of in between her past and present, and you're seeing how her relationship with Atlas was in the past, and you're also seeing how it's affecting her relationship now in the present. So it's got an interesting twist at the end. Like, it was interesting. I didn't like the ending, but I did like the book. It was a good read. So this was my first Colleen Hoover book. So yeah, this was actually pretty good, not gonna lie, but it just wasn't romance. Yeah. Okay, March. Okay, so in March, I really wanted to pick up on my reading, so I was able to read a total of 5 books in the month of March. The first book I read, I went into the Addicted series. Now, I'm already getting excited because, spoiler, I love this series so much. I just finished Hot House Flower, and I know that's a spoiler for May, but oh my gosh. So the Addicted series, the original one, follows Lily and Lo. It's Lily Calloway and Lauren Hale. Oh my god, I love this couple so much. So in the first book, you meet Lily and Lo, and you are kind of introduced to their siblings. Lily has a total of 3 sisters. She has Poppy, Rose, and Daisy. And then then you have Lauren Hale, and there's a twist. You meet Reich Meadows, and you also meet Connor Cobalt. So those are the 6 people in the group. Poppy doesn't really show much. Like, she's there, but she's not. She's the eldest of the Calloway sisters, so she's really not involved in their shenanigans. But Lily and her sisters, they're the 3. So you have Lily, Rose, and Daisy, and then you have Reich, Lo, and Connor. And these 6 people, it's a whole ordeal. So in the first book, you meet Lily and Lo, and the ones that look like this, the white ones with like the broken heart, that's Lily and Lo's story. In the first book, you get both of their POVs, Lily and Lo. Lily is actually, it's not POV. Yeah, it's not POV. So Lily is a sex addict and Lauren is an alcoholic, and they pretty much go from childhood friends to fake dating to lovers. And this book it gave me all the feels that I needed in a book. And I think this book did a good job of hooking me onto the series, because then I was curious as to what happened to their story. So the second book I read, I went right into the next book, which is Ricochet. It's a really short book. I think I finished this in like a day or 2. This is just Lily's perspective, because at some point they decide not to partake in their addictions anymore. So This is from just Lily's perspective. It's an amazing book. I absolutely loved it. It was short, but it was what you needed to get to the rest of the book, and it really helps you fall in love with Lily and Lo as a couple, and I absolutely loved it. Then I kind of wanted to take a break because I don't want to get sick of the series, and I do find that I enjoy going back to the series, just do that back and forth. So I did say that I will read 1 to 2 of their books a month at least. Until I finish, and then I think I might go into the other ones, the spin-offs. Like, it's a whole thing. So there's 5 books for the Addicted series, and then 5 books for the Calloway Sisters series, and you read them. I'm reading them intertwined. I'm reading the recommended order, which I'll have posted right here, and this is how it's said to read it, so that's how I'm reading it. But I think you can read the Addicted series alone, just Lily and Lo. And then you could also read the Calloway Sisters individually, but I'm reading them intertwined, so everything is kind of like flowing together. The next book I wanted to kind of come out of romance is One of Us is Lying, and this is by Karen McManus. I'm sorry. This is a YA murder mystery. 4 students go into detention, and by the end of detention, one of the students is dead. It's actually 5 students go in. So 5 students go into detention. By the end of detention, one of them does not make it out alive, and the other 4 are the suspects. So it goes through all 4 POVs, and each time you're kind of trying to figure out who did it. You're like, well, it could be this person, it can't be this person, and by the end, you're like, okay, who did it? This doesn't make sense. Like, it can't be. The twist at the end, by the time I got maybe like 2/3 through the book, I kind of figured out who the murderer was. But it was still fun to read nonetheless. So this was a good book. I would suggest it. I think I probably gave this a 3.5 out of 5. 3.5 out of 5 is still good to read. It just wasn't like, it didn't woo me. Then for my birthday, my father had ordered me these 2 books by Emily McIntyre. So my dad had ordered me Hooked and Scarred, but they didn't get here until March. So that's when I ended up reading them. As soon as I got them, let me tell you, when I finished One of Us is Lying, I jumped right into Hook. This was actually the first time I ever annotated a book, and I didn't really annotate it a lot. It's just like a couple of little pieces here and there. But this book, I think after chapter 1, I was hooked. Ha! I think after chapter 1 I was hooked. So I was really interested in reading more of this book and getting closer into what was happening. It's a story about Captain Hook, pretty much. It's like a Peter Pan retelling, but not the Peter Pan story. It's a completely different story. And even the characters in the book, it's not like his name is Captain Hook. They're all kind of twisted. Like Wendy's name is Wendy Michaels. Wendy has a brother named, it's Jacob or Joseph, whatever the other brother is in Peter Pan, that was her brother's name, and both of their last names was Michael, which was the 3rd brother. So instead of there being a 3rd brother, that's their last name, and their father is Peter. But he's not like a little boy, he's a grown man, and there's like a whole, it's different. Like it's really different, but it was good. It was so good. Like, I fell in love with this book right away. Then there was Scarred, which is supposed to be a Lion King inspired book. The only thing I didn't like is, Lion King is like one of the few Disney movies that we have that portrays like Africa. We don't have many black Disney anything. And then the one that they do give us, like Tiana, she's around during segregation, and she's a frog most of her movies. So they always portray us as animals, but that's a whole different story. So in this book, it's about Scar. And Scar's name in this book is Tristan, but he's still Scar just because he does have a scar. So you kind of like it, they're not the characters, but you know which characters they are. Like, for instance, the love interest in this book, her name is Sarah B, which in Lion King, Mufasa's wife, her name was Sarabi. So just break it up, Sarah B. This book was really good. Both of these books are very spicy, very cute, very dark. I didn't think I was going to be into dark romances, but after reading those two books, definitely. And I love Emily McIntyre's style of writing. I think she is so raw and to the point. Search up trigger warnings, because if you're a sensitive person, you may not be into her books, but let me tell you, honey, I love them. So those are all the books that I read in March. April. So April, I did a lot of reading. I still only read 5 books, but April was like a thick stack of books. So these are all the books I read in April. So I started with the 3rd book in the Addicted series. So at this point, I have already read all 3. I have read the first 3 of the Addicted series. So I went into Addicted for now, and this book was so good. This is when you go to the dual POV from Lily to Lo, and you're kind of getting a sense of how their relationship is progressing now that they are trying to get over their addictions. It was so good. You see way more of her sisters in this book than you did in the first 2, and that's kind of when you get introduced to them and you kind of want to know more about their stories. So this was a really good book. I gave this a 5-star because I definitely feel like it was entertaining. It definitely had me captivated the entire time that I was reading this book, and I could not put it down. Okay. So next I picked up Crave. This is a YA sci-fi type book. It's almost like, it's like Twilight, but it's not Twilight, if that makes sense. It has like a Twilight-esque to it. So exactly what you think happened, that's what happened. So my camera died, my phone died. I actually film on my phone, so it had died and I had somewhere to go. So we're just going to pick up where we left off. The last time I was talking about Crave. I'm going to briefly talk about this book because this book gives me mixed feelings. Not this book, this series gives me mixed feelings. So this is Crave, and Crave is the first installment for the Crave series, which I think is a total of 6 or 7 books. And Crave follows Jackson and Grace, and it is kind of like a Twilight take 2. So it's almost like they took that aura of Twilight and put it in a different book. This book has more than just vampires and werewolves. It has vampires, werewolves, dragons, gargoyles, witches. So it has all of those things in one book. And with that, there's this whole story about Jackson and Grace. You fall in love with them as a couple. Jackson is like the grumpy bad boy, and Grace is like the naive human at first. So I absolutely loved this book. It was very sweet. It had you rooting for Grace and Jackson as a couple. You learn why Jackson is so like standoffish. You get to learn why he's like that, and it's just a beautiful story. This book in particular, Crave, is a 5 out of 5 for me. Now, because I loved this book so much, I went ahead and I bought the others to the series. I brought Crush, and I read Crush right after I read Crave. If you follow me on Instagram, then you know. If you follow me on TikTok, then you know. This book, let me start by saying the writing is great. The writing style is great. This book made no sense. This and this cannot be in the same family. Like, they cannot be like sister books. They just can't. This book makes absolutely no sense in my opinion as to the way that things played out. So, quick spoilers, skip ahead. Grace is from the first book, and Jackson had a brother named Hudson. Hudson is in this book. Grace has this whole epiphany, and she starts falling for Hudson. Jackson does nothing wrong. He hasn't done anything. Like, he's not an a-hole. He's not anything. And she just, like, oh, well, I liked you, but his brother is just him on steroids. So I'm not a fan of the brother. I'm not a fan of the brother trope. Like, love triangles, okay, but when they're relatives, I'm not a fan. So this goes into the brothers trope. So she is torn between brothers, and I don't like that. So I rated this like a 3 out of 5 because it is a good book writing wise. Like, the style is good, but there's a lot of like things where they messed up. Like, in the first book, there's this character named Flint, and Flint is a dragon. And in the first book, he starts flirting with Grace, so you kind of see where the Twilight part comes. I mean, he's not a werewolf, but he's a dragon, so what you kind of get is like, okay, he might be the one that wants Grace's heart next to Jackson. That triangle I can deal with. But then in the second book, he comes out as gay, which is fine, but that didn't make sense as to why he was telling Grace things like, oh, when I hit on you, you'll know it. What? I was completely turned off by this book. I'm not reading the other two, and I do have them. I have Covet and Court, and no. So then in the middle of April, Emily McIntyre dropped the third book from her Never After series, and this was Wretched. This book, first of all, I wish I would have gotten the hardcover. I think I just bought it like off a whim because I wanted to have it as soon as it dropped. This book is definitely not YA. I'll tell you that much. This is definitely not for children. This is a really, like, Emily McIntyre, let me tell you, as much as I loved Hook and Scarred, those were about the boys. This one is about the girls, honey. So the main character, she is actually the bad guy. She's the grumpy in this book. And so let me see. So her name is Evelyn, and Evelyn is the daughter of like a mafia kingpin type situation. But within that dynamic, she is actually the one who runs everything. And the problem that she's having is she's not getting enough respect from her family. Her sister is Dorothy, so it is a take on The Wizard of Oz, which you can kind of get from Wretched. And I'm assuming that Evelyn is probably the evil witch. Because she had 3 sisters. Remember, the witch had sisters. Had multiple sisters. So I even annotated this book because it was so good. Like, I don't annotate like most people because I don't like to mess up my books. I don't like to like write in them or anything. But there are sometimes there are like points in the book where you're like, oh my gosh. So that's how it was with this. This book was so good. Evelyn was, and they called her Evie for short. Evie was cutthroat, okay? The male character is Nicholas, but in this book, he's an undercover FBI agent, and he gives her like some other name, which I think it's Cal or something like that. You see how he is intrigued by Evie, but he's supposed to be taking her down, so it just becomes this whole thing. This book was so good. 5 out of 5. I love Emily McIntyre's writing. It was amazing. Chef's kiss. And then right after that, I had to hit some more of the Addicted series. This is from the Addicted / Calloway. This is the Calloway Sisters series. This is Kiss the Sky. So this book is about Rose. She is Lily's older sister. I think they're only like a year apart. They're not that far apart in age, but she's Lily's older sister, and she's actually the one that you meet in Addicted for Now. She's the one that really goes above and beyond. Yeah, Addicted for Now. She's the one who goes above and beyond to help Lily and Lo with their addictions and, you know, coexisting with their addictions, because it has to be hard to be a sex addict and be in a relationship because, I mean, you're gonna
want to have sex, but
so she really is like supportive. Mind you, she doesn't like Lo, but for her sister, she's like, yeah, you know, you're good for her. Woo, woo, woo. You can stein. And it's all good. So, this book talked about Rose and Connor Cobalt. Let me tell you, Connor gives you all the feels because he is so smart. Like, you at first you kind of think that he's in it for like other people's money, but no, homeboy had his own bread and he is like so smart. His back and forth with Rose was so sexy. And in the first couple of books, Rose is a virgin, so clearly that's not going to be the case in this book.
Connor?
Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I need to say. If you want to get the feels for Connor Cobalt, Kiss the Sky. And this is by Christina and Becca Ritchie. They did their thing with this whole series. I absolutely love it. May. Okay, so for May, my first book was actually a Kindle book. It's my second Colleen Hoover book. It was called Regretting You. And this book is a little different from most romance novels. It's actually not a romance novel. It follows Morgan and Clara. Morgan is the mother and Clara is her daughter, and they actually go through something completely tragic and terrible. But amongst that tragedy, a lot of secrets that may not have been supposed to come out. And they kind of have to like build their life up from there. This book was really, really cute. I loved it. It definitely had me giggling. It had me angry at some points. I think it was a great book. I would rate it like a 4 out of 5, maybe a 3.5 no, I would say like a 4.2 out of 5 because there were some instances where I was getting frustrated because I was like, bro, like you're seeing both perspectives, so it's like if y'all would just talk and have like communication, this could all be avoided. And I'm sorry, Morgan, the mom, she was getting on my nerves because yeah, that's all I can say, because if I say why she was getting on my nerves, then I'm going to give away like what happened in the book. So 4.2 out of 5, loved that book. So the next book I read was Promises and Pomegranates, and this is by Sav R. Miller. I don't know if I said that right, but it's by Sav R. Miller. This book is it's called Monsters and Muses. This is book 1. I am definitely ordering the other. There's 4 books. I definitely want to order the other ones. This one, okay, it's about Elena and Cal, and Cal kind of refers to Elena as his Persephone, and he's supposed to be like Hades, but it's not like, he's not actually Hades and she's not actually Persephone. It's just the way that he interprets their relationship with each other. So the way it starts, Cal works for Elena's father, who is in the mafia, and there's some sort of deal that happens, and what ends up happening is Elena is forced to marry Cal. So it's forced proximity. This book gets really hot and bothered, and it gets really sexy, and yeah, like all the feels once again. So I rated this book a 4 out of 5. Decent 4 out of 5. And the only reason I said that is, the only reason I take that 1 point is at the end, the reason why shit went left, it doesn't make sense. It's almost like when you got to the end of the book, they were trying to hurry up and wrap it up because it just wasn't really, there really weren't many like Easter eggs or cookie crumbs left throughout the story, so that when you got to the end, you were like, oh, you know, like it's hinted in the beginning, and then when you get to the end, you're like, wait a minute, what? Yeah, it's a good book. It's a really, really good book. Let me tell you, the spicy scenes, girl, A1. I loved this book. This was fun. It was a good time. And it actually opened the door for me to read the next book. So I never really heard much about Hades and Persephone, but I do love Hades as a Greek mythology god. I think his story was really interesting and kind of like, misunderstood as to like, oh, like why does he have to live? He got the underworld by default. So, the next book I read, this is called A Touch of Darkness, and this is by Scarlett St. Clair. This book is about Hades and Persephone. The difference between this and that book is the actual characters are Hades and Persephone. Persephone is actually living amongst humans with a disguise, and all of the gods kind of live on the mortal realm or on the world, and they do things like they own nightclubs and restaurants, and they have these different businesses, and they live amongst the mortals. But Persephone doesn't want to live as a god amongst the mortals. She just wants to live like a mortal. Hades actually owns a nightclub, and she ends up in this nightclub where she's not supposed to be. Like, her mother told her not to go there, and she did. And she ends up in a deal with Hades, and she has to live up to her end of the deal, but she doesn't really know how. There's all these twists and turns within the story. I gave this a good 4.5 out of 5. The only reason I took away that 0.5 is because at the end, again, it just kind of seemed like it was wrapped up very quickly. I think it could have, went a little further, but it is the start of a series. So there is a part 2, 3, and I think there's a 4th book, but I only have the first 3. So the next book is called A Touch of Ruin, which I plan on reading in June. So, Touch of Darkness, this was really good. It was a really great start to Hades and Persephone. I loved their relationship with each other. I loved how everything played out. I think that it was a really cute way to do Hades and Persephone. So definitely check that one out. I absolutely loved it. Sex scenes, steamy, spicy scenes. Okay, the next book. What can I say about this next book? Okay, the next book I read was called Bunny. Bunny is by Mona Award. I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5. Reason being, it's a good book, don't get me wrong. It is confusing. For this book to be this thin, it took me 8 days to get through this book. It took me 8 days to get to 397 pages. It took me 8 days, and when I was done, I was like, what? I had no idea what was real. I had no idea what was fake. I have no idea where this character was going. I guess that's kind of the point, but for me, it just wasn't my cup of tea, so I really can't say too much about this book. It is a murder mystery. I don't know if it's YA or if it's just, like regular adult murder mystery. It takes place in the UK, I believe, and they are in university, so they're in college. And the main character, I believe her name is Samantha. The main character, Samantha, is kind of dealing with these group of girls, and I don't know. This is the type of book where you just have to read it. Some people like it. I feel like it had a lot of mixed reviews, so check it out if you want. I will never read that book again. And I wouldn't recommend it to anybody who likes like certain genres. Like, I think if you're like the type of person who I feel like if you're the type of person who likes to try new things, then yeah. The only part about this book that was so annoying is like the murderous girls, the 4 girls, the clique that she talks to, they say Bunny with everything. Like,
hi Bunny, what's going on Bunny? I miss you Bunny, you're so cute Bunny. Oh my god, I love that outfit Bunny.
It was annoying. It was annoying to read. It was so annoying to read. So once I was done with that, I needed a book to pick me up. So we went right back to the Calloway Sisters. So I'm in the process of reading this in the order that is recommended on their website. So I am in the process of reading the Addicted/Calloway Sisters series in the order that it is recommended on the Christina and Becca Ritchie's website. So I've already read the first 4 books, and this is the 5th book installment. This is Hot House Flower. This follows Daisy and Reich. Daisy is actually Lily's youngest sister, and she's about 7 years younger than her, 6 or 7 years younger than her. And Reich, who actually is Lo's older brother, he starts to fall for Daisy. Now, all of these events that happen in this book have happened throughout the first 4 books in the series, so it's good to read it in that order just so that it kind of makes more sense. But yeah, so Daisy is the youngest, and now she's finally 18, and Reich is a lot older. So this is like an age gap thing. I'm not typically a huge fan of like large age gaps, but I think 18 and 25 is not that bad. But, you know, still a little cringy. Not too bad though. Especially since he's known her since she was 15. It's like, I don't know. Sounds kind of gross. But you meet Daisy and Reich and you follow their story, and when they fall for each other, and they're more of like the rough style. I kind of liked Kiss the Sky better because it's like the academic rivals to lovers. This one is a age gap romance. It's really sweet. It's really cute. Daisy annoys me a little bit, but I do like the story, and I do like the twists and turns and the great things that happen in the end that have me so excited for the next book. I think the next book is Thrive. So far, the entire series to me is a 5 out of 5, but Hot House Flower in particular is a 4 out of 5 for me, maybe even a 4.5 out of 5 for me. It was a really good book. I absolutely loved it. I think the story is cute. The only thing that I wasn't too fond of is the dumb antics that Daisy got into, and I'm just not a huge fan of like a large age gap. I mean, it's okay, and I guess it depends on the people, but it's not my cup of tea. And that wraps up all of the books I've read from January up until May. And the great thing about this is it shows the progression from when I started reading all the way to now. I went from reading 1 book a month to now averaging a good 5 books a month. I'm curious to see what happens in June. I do have 5 books already picked out, and I will definitely do a TBR, and I'll let you guys know what books I am anticipating reading for the month of June. Hopefully I get through them all. I don't typically get through all the books that I want to, but I am going to try. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe to my channel. It will really mean the world to me. I would love it. Subscribe to my channel, and until next time, beauties, stay blessed.